At the heart of the ancient world's greatest empire, a philosopher walks among palaces, vineyards, and corridors of power. His name is Lucius Annaeus Seneca, advisor to the emperor, owner of a fortune that today would put him on the list of the world's top billionaires. But if you walked into his room on certain days of the month, you wouldn't see any gold. You'd see one of the most powerful men in the world sleeping on a hard floor, wearing rough clothes that irritate the skin, eating nothing but stale bread and drinking lukewarm water. He wasn't being punished. He wasn't broke. He was practicing what he called the day of poverty. Seneca discovered a secret about the psychology of money that most of us ignore. He understood that wealth brings a dangerous side effect: the fear of loss. To him, the wise man prefers wealth, but never depends on it. Needing money to be happy is a trap. The more we have, the more terrified we become of having less. We become slaves to our own comfort. To break this chain, Seneca prescribed a radical remedy. From this experiment, 3 counterintuitive lessons emerged that we're going to apply today. The first has the power to reset your pleasure in simple things. The second vaccinates your brain against future anxiety. And the third, perhaps the most important, gives you the only form of security that no one can ever take away. Modern science calls this hedonic adaptation. You work hard to buy a better car, a bigger house, or finer food. For a few weeks, you feel happy, but very quickly, your brain normalizes the new luxury. What was extraordinary becomes the new normal, and the old normal becomes unacceptable. Suddenly, the idea of living the way you did 5 years ago seems unbearable. Without even realizing it, you've built a golden cage. You have to keep earning more and more just to maintain the same feeling. This creates a constant background anxiety, a silent fear that if the economy shifts, or if you lose your job, your happiness will collapse. Despite his immense fortune, Seneca refused to live in fear. As he once said, "He who fears poverty will never be truly rich, even if he owns the world." He proved through direct physical experience that human happiness is much tougher than we imagine. Lesson 1. Voluntary discomfort. The first lesson starts with a direct challenge. In one of his most famous letters, Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" Seneca noticed that in Rome, people overcomplicated their lives in an attempt to live well. They sought out rare wines and exotic banquets, believing that sophistication required complexity. But he realized something fundamental. Too many layers only distance a person from their own satisfaction. His proposal isn't about suffering. It's about cutting out the middleman between you and your life. In modern terms, think of it as a convenience detox. When we have the power to solve any discomfort instantly with money, we create a dangerous habit. We get used to owning things, and we forget how to feel them. Our choices start to revolve around consuming things instead of living experiences. This creates a silent stress. To maintain this accumulated lifestyle, we create maintenance anxiety. We run nonstop to support the excess And in the process, we lose the only asset we can't get back: time. What's the point of luxury if you're too busy to actually be present? Seneca was radical, but the lesson for us is gentle. We don't need to fear simplicity. We just need to remember that our greatest wealth isn't in our bank account, but in our availability for life. Cutting out the middleman means understanding that buying experiences isn't always necessary. A complex dinner or an expensive delivery can be replaced by a simple meal, prepared with care and fresh ingredients. High-priced entertainment can be traded for a quiet walk or reading that book that's been waiting on your shelf. Seneca shows us that true frugality isn't about scarcity. It's the elegant understanding that the essentials are, in themselves, deeply pleasurable. When you remove the noise of consumption, all that's left is life. And that's enough. Lesson 2. Restoring sensitivity. The second lesson concerns what Seneca called pleasure burnout. He said, "No pleasure lasts unless it's refreshed by variety. What once delighted us becomes boring through continuity." Seneca realized that the relentless pursuit of absolute comfort creates an invisible side effect, the numbing of the senses. We live in an age of overstimulation. We have access to intense flavors, endless entertainment, and immediate convenience. But the paradox of this abundance is that it raises our threshold for satisfaction. When the extraordinary becomes routine, it stops being extraordinary. It just becomes normal. And when the exceptional becomes the standard, we lose the ability to be charmed by the simple. Seneca's proposal to voluntarily restrict luxury wasn't about suffering. It was about restoring sensitivity. He understood that frugality acts as a palate cleanser for the soul. It's not about denying pleasure, but about creating the contrast necessary for pleasure to exist again. Think about the feeling of drinking a glass of cold water after a long walk. The water is simple, but in that moment, it offers a satisfaction that no expensive wine could match. Quiet wealth lives in this ability to feel. It's the skill of finding deep joy in things that are already available. When we remove the excess noise, whether it's the noise of consumption, information, or showing off, our sensitivity returns. You discover that you don't need to turn up the volume of your life to feel alive. You realize that life, in its natural and uncomplicated state, already holds all the richness we were trying to buy. Lesson 3. The Fortress of Autonomy. The third and final lesson is about building a fortress. Seneca said, "Fortune has no power over the man who's content with enough." Many people live with a lurking fear of the future, fear of economic shifts, fear of job market changes, fear of losing status. This fear exists because we've built lifestyles that require perfect conditions and ever-growing salaries to survive. Any change in the scenery causes panic. Intentional simplicity brings back a quiet form of autonomy. When you know, from your own experience, that your happiness is robust and that you live well on the essentials, you become invincible. You discover that your dignity isn't tied to your car or your address. This gives you the greatest luxury in the modern world: the power of choice. You gain the freedom to walk away from a toxic workplace because your cost of living is low. You gain the time to dedicate to creative projects because you aren't a hostage to an inflated consumption pattern. You gain the courage to be honest because you don't depend on anyone's financial approval. Of course, we live in a world where we need money to support ourselves. I'm not saying you shouldn't make money. I'm saying don't fall into the trap of mindless spending and living a lifestyle your wallet can't handle. The biggest secret to a sustainable financial life is always spending less than you earn. It sounds simple, because it is, but it's very easy to get carried away by credit card installments or impulsive, unnecessary shopping. True wealth, in Seneca's view, isn't the ability to buy the whole world. It's the ability to not depend on the whole world to be at peace. When you need less, the world loses the power to control you. And that is freedom. We spend most of our lives running toward a future number. We believe that once we have that amount, we'll finally rest. Seneca's wisdom reaches across 2,000 years to offer us a shortcut. Security doesn't come from excess. It comes from the skill of finding enough. Today's invitation isn't to abandon comfort or live in scarcity. It's to ensure that comfort doesn't become a cage. It's a call to practice simplicity, restore your senses, and build your autonomy. As the Japanese proverb says, the man who knows enough is rich, even if he's poor. The man who doesn't know enough is poor, even if he's rich. Which of those two types of wealth are you building today?